Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. It has been an absolutely wild ride to the end of the year for the old Seaman, and in a year like 2020, I wouldn't have asked for it any other way. We have been busy cranking on reviews all day because all of the movies that we've talked about thus far, played into my top 10 list, or ultimately top 25. I always lay out the full 25 for me every year. And only tell you guys about my top 10 and, of course, my 5 honorable mentions. So, as it is New Year's Eve, and as all of but a video ago, I had started the beverages. Cheers to everybody on your New Year's Eve. Like I said, here it is 10:30 on the East Coast. We are 90 minutes away from 2021. I am certainly very excited, so cheers to you guys. Get yourself a beverage of choice. I would have liked a margarita and went to the fridge and had no fresh limes. So I was like, oh well, other half beer it is. But if you have a beverage, grab a beverage. If you got your popcorn, grab your popcorn. Just strap in. I'm going to shoot for 20 minutes, but we all know how much I like to talk. And when you're talking about 10 movies, plus 5 honorable mentions, it might be a little bit longer than 20. So why don't you pull up a chair, man? Take a seat. It is officially time to dive in to the Seaman's top 10 movies of 2020. Oh my goodness. It's one thing when you create these images on the computer. It's a totally another one when you put them up on the screen. That's a very large picture of me. His head might be as big as mine in real life. Anyway, though, it is that time, man. Like I said, it's the end of the year. And what a weird year, right? I mean, with the pandemic and the shutting down of movie theaters and some movies turning into at-home streaming releases and some day-and-date releases and just everything that we've gone through. It's been a wild 2020, specifically in the movie world. And I tell you right now, the last movie I saw in a theater was The Hunt. And at that time, all the way back at the beginning of March, I was like, I really dug this movie. It's in my top 10 list right now. It just barely makes the top 25. I have it currently sitting at 25 in my overall top 25. But I said 25 a lot there. Yeah, man, like that was the last movie I saw in the theaters. It was the pandemic was starting to ramp up, and I knew I had like a couple of new movies I wanted to get in before most likely everything was going to shut down. It was Bloodshot and The Hunt were the last 2 movies I got in before 2020 shut down. And Bloodshot is not on my top 25. But what is on my top 10? Well, you might have a preview based on the image behind me if you're using that as a gauge, but you certainly have no clue as to my honorable mentions. And even with seeing less movies than normal, I think I usually cap well over 120 on the year. I came in around 70, I think, give or take a few. And that's so drastically low to what I usually see, and it still was super, super hard. Like, even with more than half of the normal amount of movies I have to sift through on my movie list, I had less to go through and had a tougher time. The movies we did get this year were very, very good. And I can't wait to dive into all top 10. But before that, we got to touch on the 5 honorable mentions. And these were all movies that I one time or another, I had in the top 10 or thought about being in the top 10, but all certainly deserving of being mentioned. So 15 on the old Seaman's list is Fatman, coming to us from the Nelms brothers, who I got to interview. I swear them being on the top 15 is not biased in any way because I got to interview those guys. It was a movie that I really, really dug. Thought it was an honest, earnest look at Santa Claus and the acting that you get from this cast, specifically Mel Gibson, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, and Walton Goggins, just gave me something that I didn't see coming and that I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed. So Fatman's in at 15 for me. Another really pleasant surprise. I am not, or was not, personally a big fan when it comes to Pete Davidson. His brand of comedy was just not something that I really ever got. And boy, did the King of Staten Island turn me around on this guy. One, the lead up and the interviews that he did to it, tons of stuff I didn't know about Pete Davidson that immediately made me like him more. And then seeing this performance in this movie, oh man, like just super charming, and like he really does win you over. And you throw in an unbelievable supporting role from Bill Burr, who in 2020 has shown everybody between King of Staten Island and The Mandalorian, he's one of the best actors out there right now. Not just one of the best comedians, but like you put him in front of a camera and that dude just shines. So The King of Staten Island comes in at 14. I really, really dug that. In at 13, Freaky! This was not a movie that I expected to be in the top 25. It was just one I expected to enjoy and have fun with. But as we've come to see from Christopher Landon, this dude really knows how to blend horror and blend humor. And he did it with the Happy Death Day movies. And here, he upped the horror game. The kills in this movie, specifically the opening 5 minutes. Wow! Like, that alone should put you, boom, right into the top 15. I was not expecting that opening 15 minutes. And then when you just get the performances that you get from Vaughn and Newton, and the way they're able to swap, roles and play each other so well. It's just a really nice, surprising, fun horror comedy movie that I really, really liked more than I was anticipating. So we get that in at 13. At number 12, Disney Pixar's Soul. Oh man, this movie was legitimately in the top 10 all but a few hours ago, and the reshuffling dropped it into 12. It's a movie that just hit home for me, man. Like I said in my review, this is a Disney Pixar movie that feels like it was written and geared specifically toward adults. And it was just awesome to watch the whole thing unfold, and the visuals are just gorgeous. Like when you're in the Great Before, the vision of that land and the souls and the way everything operates, it's like watching art come to life. And Tina Fey and Jamie Foxx just put in really excellent performances that drive home one of my all-time favorite Pixar movies right out the bat, man. Like, this one knocked it out the park for me. So we get that at number 12, and then at number 11, Spike Lee's The Five Bloods, another movie that was in my top 10 for a good chunk of the year. One of the best supporting roles in the entire year, coming from Chadwick Boseman. But also one of the best performances of the year, and a career performance, I think, from Delroy Lindo. And just a really touching and emotionally driven and just like impactful film from Spike Lee. We've come to expect that always from him. Absolutely great stuff. But really does take a look at post-traumatic stress disorder in a way that I haven't really seen done in a movie. And the idea of a brotherly bond that comes over, fighting in war together and just dealing with all that stuff and then going back years after was just a really, really cool flick. So there you go, man. Those are my 5 honorable mentions. We've got Fatman, The King of Staten Island, Freaky, Pixar's Soul, or Disney Pixar's Soul, The Five Bloods, and now it is time. Drum roll, please! For the Seaman's top 10 movies of the year, and a weird year it's been. I've mentioned this. Almost no superhero movies whatsoever. No Marvel movies. First time since I think 2012 or 2015, somewhere in there, that we haven't had a Marvel movie. And up until Wonder Woman stuck right under the line there at Christmas, the only superhero movie we really got from either of the big superhero properties was Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. And this isn't a perfect movie. But overall, I think Kathy Yan does a pretty good job. The one thing I really think this movie could have used was Chad Stahelski being involved from the action side of things. He came in for the reshoots. Would have been nice if maybe he had been in right from the get-go, so everyone would have had time to train correctly to pull off some of the cool action that he does pull off. But outside of the action stuff, I think Yan does a good job of building this girl team and giving Harley a vehicle to just be awesome. And Margot Robbie is always awesome when she plays Harley Quinn. And there are moments in this movie that I just adore. I mean, watching her crave a bacon, egg, and cheese. When you grow up on the East Coast, I don't know about anywhere else, but outside of New York City and in New Jersey, bacon, egg, and cheeses are humongous, man. I'm sure they are everywhere, but I swear that we have the best. And watching her like literally fall in love with a bacon, egg, and cheese just hit my heart in a way that I wouldn't have expected in this movie. And like I said, Margot is just always awesome, and everybody that shows up here is really great. I love Rosie Perez. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is fantastic. As we know, Journey Smollett, just breakout year in 2020. She was easily the biggest standout outside of Harley and one Ewan McGregor, who we'll talk about in a second, playing Black Canary. But it was really fun to watch them all on screen toward the end in the final act. But the biggest standout, besides Margot, of course, is Ewan McGregor, who plays Roman Sionis, a.k.a. Black Mask. And while writing here, script-wise, we have Christina Hodson, who I think does a good job, except for the fact that she really kind of veered away from comic accuracy with Black Mask, and that kind of rubbed me a little bit the wrong way. But Ewan McGregor's performance is just top notch, and like one of those things where you see an actor just really enjoying his role. And let's face facts, man, you weren't going to have a top 10 list in 2020 without a superhero movie. Get real. It's the Seaman's top 10 list. So obviously there was going to be one in there, and there was very few to choose from. But for me, I saw Birds of Prey at a early access screening. The cast showed up, which was crazy. Just made for a wild experience going into that first viewing, and I loved it then, and every viewing I've had since, even when I've looked for some of the criticisms that have been out there, this one just lands for me every time. It's just super enjoyable and fun, and I think so much of that has to do with Margot Robbie and then just the way that she handles playing the one and only Harley Quinn. Again, not always the most comically in tune, but certainly embodies that character to her core and has turned it into something that I think the fans really do enjoy. So, number 10 for me, Birds of Prey. Coming in at number 9, we go with maybe the feel-good movie of the year for me. This was a really shitty year for a lot of people. And when you think of things in 2020 that put a smile on your face or just made you feel good or made you reminisce, go to that nostalgia place that can get you to roll a tear because it reminded you of a time that was good. Well, that was what you were looking for in 2020. Bill and Ted Face the Music is every single bit of that. Getting to see Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter back in action with the original writers and Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, and just hitting this movie in a way that we've seen a lot of movies from my childhood try to make comebacks, and almost all of them have failed. And this one succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. Not only is it a wonderful tribute and homage to both Bill and Ted's excellent adventure and bogus journey, but it is just a movie about friendship and about family that just hits home, man, and it makes you feel good. And like I said, it gives you that nostalgia ride where like you go back to someplace you're familiar with, like going home after a long time and getting to hang out with your old friends. And Keanu and Alex are just absolutely wonderful. And then you add in that they added Samara Weaving and Bridget Lundy Payne to play their daughters, Thea and Billy. Oh, it just adds another layer to the entire franchise and to that movie. And watching them work, separately and then eventually together to once again save the world, just really warmed my heart in a way that, like I said, brought a few tears to my eyes, man. It was just, like I said, in a year where so much bad stuff has gone down, this was one of the few movies that just glows, joy and brightness and good vibes. And I loved Bill and Ted Face the Music. Just an absolute blast from the past that actually worked. And that makes it all the more impressive. So at number 9, we go Bill and Ted Face the Music. Now we move on to number 8. And a movie, again, that I had seen just before the pandemic kind of sank in, right at the end of February, heading into March, The Invisible Man. And that was one of those first, PVOD, when that dropped on VOD, man, I was like, we gotta rent this right away, because it was so good, and I never got a chance to go back and see it a second time. Because, wow, what a brilliant concept, man. To bring The Invisible Man, one of those classic horror movies, and you know me, I'm a horror junkie, to bring that to life in a way that caught me off guard the way that this movie does continually. The way that it uses space and empty space to scare the living daylights out of you because maybe something is there. I mean, there are times where there is nothing there and you just sit on a shot and you're like, where is it? Where is he in the room? And then when you least expect him to be in the room, he pops up and, delivers some of the scariest, oh, damn moments. I mean, that dinner sequence, I'm trying to keep these spoiler-free tonight, but that dinner sequence, you know what I'm talking about if you saw The Invisible Man. You want to talk about one of the most shocking moments in any movie in 2020. I never saw that coming a million miles away, man. Or even a mile away. I couldn't have seen that coming. And it was things like that and the inventive nature of using the Invisible Man and the technology that actually, when you hear it laid out, you're like, yeah, it works for me in the year 2020. Made sense and was just done so well. Almost, and it felt like to some degree, an ode to Hollow Man, which is one of my favorite horror movies that involve invisibility, and was kind of something that again kind of strived for that Invisible Man quality and gave you something that felt like it came from that world. And this just seems like the ultimate evolution from the original to something like Hollow Man to now. You get everything here with this. And then you add in Elizabeth Moss, who is one of the best actors in all of Hollywood. She turns out an unbelievable performance, which is something that up until recently wasn't typically equated with horror movies. And now we get all these rock-solid, rock star actors to come in and just mind-blowing performances. And to watch Moss in this setting, it was just delightful, right from the very, very beginning all the way to the very end. Lots of wonderful twists and surprises. And The Invisible Man, for me, comes in at number 8. And we move on now to number 7. And a little Netflix action and another horror movie. There are actually, I believe, 4 real horror movies on this list. One genre movie that could tilt toward the horror world, and a sci-fi movie. Not what I was expecting in 2020, but also at the same time kind of fitting. So we move on from our first of 4 horror movies and move to our second, coming from Netflix, and a first-time writer-director here, man. Directorial debuts were insane in how good they are. And you're going to see quite a few of them pop up in this list momentarily. And Netflix's His House is one of those. Coming to us from writer-director Remy Weeks, we get this story about a Sudanese refugee couple who, upon landing in the UK, are eventually placed in a house, and that house is haunted. And the thing I love about this movie is something that you'll see a common thread in a lot of the horror movies we're going to bring up, but utilizing the realm of horror to tell a story that's deeper than that, to dive into a refugee story that deals with loss and survivor's guilt and, how far will you go to survive? And you mix that into a haunted house movie where so often when you have a haunted house movie, you just sit there and go, leave the house. Come on. At this point, you've had 5 ridiculous encounters. Just leave the house. And then when they finally try to leave the house, it's too late. You can't. And what's cool with this movie is because of that refugee background that we have for our lead characters in Bol and Rial, they can't leave their house. Literally, if they don't want to go back, they cannot leave the house. The reason they're stuck there is circumstantial. That there are legitimate reasons in the real world why they can't leave. And watching them try to strive to make this work while dealing with the horrors that are going on in the house is something that just captivated me start to finish in the movie. And the performances that we get from Soap Derisu and Wunmi Masaku are just mind-blowing, and they play very different roles. While they are a couple, the way they approach the house is very different, and I love watching how Masaku's approach to it is very real to her and to where she comes from, and some of that heritage and cultural aspects, and having those in her back pocket makes her less scared than Bowl does. Dorisu's performance is way more frightened than Masaku's, because he's so focused on making the house work and making sure that they stay and don't go back, that he kind of loses touch with things that led to them getting there, and from where they came from. He's kind of lost touch with that, and so the horror elements for him are way scarier, and I love the way that Weeks plays with all those things, as well as a story that is legitimately interesting in and of itself without a horror background, and being able to mesh that together to tell a really impactful story inside the realm of a horror movie. Well, you know me, I love when that happens, and as I said, you need to strap in, because I was shooting for 20, and we're at the 20-minute mark now, and we are only almost halfway through. So, number 7, His House on Netflix for Memory Weeks. Really, really solid one there. We move on now to number 6, and another horror movie, and a movie that, upon seeing it the first time, I had said right from jump was my favorite movie of the year at the time, and one of the more impressive ones that I've seen. And it's just awesome to know that 5 movies outdid that one after seeing it. And that is, of course, Relic, which comes to us from yet another first-time writer-director, Natalie Eric James. And Relic is one of these cool, also kind of ghost house, haunted house stories, where, grandma goes missing, mom and daughter come to try to find her. Eventually, grandma just reappears, and then weird stuff starts going on in the house. And what I really love about this is the way in which Natalie Eric James uses this story to tackle subject matter in the world of dementia and Alzheimer's. And that ultimately is what's wrong with grandma here. Sorry, spoilers. I haven't actually talked about that element of this movie in any of the things that I've done this year, and it's the element of the movie that is the thing that makes it amazing, because you watch this haunted house movie and or almost like a possession movie, I guess, to a degree, and something's weird with grandma, and you're getting really, really awesome performances, from Robin Nevin, who plays the grandma, Emily Mortimer, who plays her daughter Kay, and then Kay's daughter Sam, played by Bella Heathcote. Really, really good performances from all 3 of them. And as they kind of go through this journey, specifically Kay and Sam, you end up in moments of different kind of fear. Emily is, constantly trying to make sure she doesn't lose her mom again, and trying to figure out what's going on with her. And same time, Sam is exploring up in one of the closets that's really kind of big, and she gets locked in there. And then the next thing you know, she gets trapped in there, and as she tries to get out, the room changes and shifts and moves around. And as she's going through, you see Post-its of things like, remember this, and my name is this, and I came from here, and I love, this. And it's all these little Post-its. And what you come to figure out is that whole sequence inside that closet, which, it turns into a maze, basically, that's just kind of closing in on you. The claustrophobic feel during that scene is fantastic. But what you come to realize by the end of the movie is that whole sequence represents Edna's brain. And she's kind of falling apart. Her skin she's got these black spots, and everything is just going to not good places. And you see some really disturbing imagery that eventually leads to a shedding of her skin, where you're like, what is happening? And when it clicks in, that is the dementia taking over all of Edna. And that, that can be passed down genetically and hereditarily, to where when you see Kay laid down next to her and she has the spot in the back of her neck and Sam sees it, you know where that's going. And you just sit there and you get to the end of that movie and you're like, wow, this is a really good haunted house movie, but on top of that, a really, really sophisticatedly written movie about dementia and what it does to the person who has it and how it affects the family, and to see that all represented in the form of a horror movie was just really, really freaking cool. So just outside the top 5, but coming in at number 6 for the old Seaman is Relic. And now we move into our top 5. I'm going to try to get this shit. It's 25. Damn, I don't know how to talk in a brief amount of time. But as we move into our top 5, You will remember from some of the reviews today that I've seen movies that I said had dramatic impact on this list and shook it up real big. And this movie, The Vast of Night, was one of those. Wow. Again, another first-time writer-director here in Andrew Patterson, and he takes us to the 1950s with two kids that, one works at the radio station, one works at the phone switchboard, and on a night where this entire New Mexican town is at a high school basketball game, something that happened all the time in the 50s, specifically in the Midwest, they're just left to themselves doing their jobs, and when they start to hear this weird noise over the radio frequencies, they kind of start to investigate. And what I love about this is it's a wonderful ode and tribute to things like the Twilight Zone and UFO movies and UFO conspiracy theories and stuff that's all in and around that whole New Mexican area. I mean, you got like when you're out in the desert out there, you got like Area 51 and all those kinds of things, and you can tell Patterson must have loved that stuff because this just seems like a love letter to that type of story, and the storytelling in which he utilizes to tell that story is some of the most impressive of the year. The way he shifts and morphs this movie in its visual look is so cool, and some things are totally going for a Twilight Zone vibe. Some things are paying homage to the world of radio storytelling, right? Like before TV, people would turn on their radios and just listen to people tell stories or act out stories. And two times in this movie, you get lengthy monologues that tell a story that help our characters start to uncover this mystery. And like the way in which he delivers it and kind of can go in and out of these different ways that he's showing you the movie, really just gripping stuff. And as it builds, it's one of these really tight, really fast-paced 90-minute movies that's always on the upswing, and when you get to the end, the payoff is just fantastic, man. Like, you finish that movie and you go, wow, I never thought I would be this satisfied or this blown away by a movie that is 90% dialogue. Like, this movie moves because of the script and some of the things that Patterson does, the way he moves the camera. He'll go on a long tracking shot when we're moving and things are happening, and then he locks down and stays stationary for a while. And then something happens, and we go on moving again, and then we lock down where we are. And just all of those little tricks and things help this movie feel like it's going like this. Wonderful performances from Sierra McCormick and Jake Horowitz. And Horowitz talks like this the whole movie, and it helps give that kind of quick pace, and you get to the end of this, like I said, with just a magnificent movie that I never in a million years saw coming to deliver like what it delivers and wow me the way that it wows me. So number 5 for me, The Vast of Night. Now we move on to number 4, and I'm a big Andy Samberg fan. I've loved him since he was on SNL, and I've loved everything he's pretty much done since SNL. And we get to Palm Springs, and wouldn't you know it, another directorial debut comes here from director Max Barbakow, who delivers this kind of Groundhog's Day type movie where Andy Samberg is stuck in a loop. And that loop is a wedding, and he relives that wedding over and over and over again. And what you find out is that there's a place that's causing this loop. And if you accidentally get pulled in there, then you get pulled into the loop as well. And that happens to both J.K. Simmons' character and Krista Miliotti's. And I love the way that they explore the idea of a loop movie. And in a year where our lives became more of a loop than ever before, because you literally were wake up, work from home, go back to, watch TV, eat dinner, go to sleep, wake up, do the same thing over and over again. And it's that monotonous repetition, but you're not going anywhere. You're literally in the same place every day, when the quarantine was going on. And even now, post-quarantine, with just the pandemic going on, that's still pretty much the case, at least for me. And watching a movie like that just kind of hit in a way where a lot of other movies didn't. And then the execution of it was just interesting. They brought in elements that added to you're not just in the loop so that you learn a lesson. You're in the loop because there's a legitimate thing. And how you navigate that and survive inside this loop, I just loved watching, because you have Samberg, who's been in the loop. He's been in the loop so long, it's basically just a game for him now, and he tries not to get killed by J.K. Simmons because Simmons is pissed at him for accidentally pulling him into the loop as well. And then you have Kristen Milioti, who stumbles into it one night and is new, and watching her figure out how to deal with it and how she copes with certain things goes to some really dark but darkly humorous places. And I just love the way that it navigates and the little love romance story that it has going on between the two characters. And like I said, just this idea of getting a feel for the appreciation of life and what you have when you just get stuck in the same thing over and over and over again. And in this movie, the ways you try to shake it up provide tons of entertainment for us. But at the end of it, this movie lands with a really, really, emotionally earned punch. Like you hit the end, and it's a poignant finish to a movie that, for me, again, was another surprise from yet another director's debut. So here, Sandberg, Milioti, Simmons, they all crush with what what they're asked to do, and they all have a really good time while doing it. And Palm Springs comes in at number 4. Which takes us to our top 3, and what you'll notice is, the last two, more genre-oriented, enjoyable movies. The top 3 are all movies that F me up in some way or another, man. These things, did they have physical and emotional impacts on me. And you want to talk about a physically emotional, visceral ride? Possessor is that. Goodness gracious, Brandon Cronenberg, son of David Cronenberg. For those who are fans, grew up in the world of horror, a fan of Mr. Cronenberg. His son here decides to dip his toe into the world of sci-fi horror and deliver some visual storytelling like you are not going to see at all anywhere else. Like I said, this movie effed me up. The concept of taking a person's consciousness and sending it into another person's consciousness to go create or go commit assassinations and murders and then have your consciousness come back to you is a wild concept. And the way in which Cronenberg dives into it and tells this story is something that physically, like, you react physically to it, man. Like, it pulls stuff out of you and makes you react, like I said, in a physical way. And the storytelling, while not a lot of depth on your character scale, is so visceral through the visuals that it is just a non-stop ride, and you get locked in because you have two of the best performances in this film. Andrea Riseborough is mind-blowingly good, and it was one of those movies, like, obviously they're transferring her consciousness a bunch, and when you get into the crux of the movie, she kind of gets trapped in the body that she's in, and you're like, damn, because I'm really liking what she's doing. And Cronenberg finds ways to keep bringing her back and keep her in the movie the whole way. And you couple that with Christopher Abbott's performance, who's the person she's kind of taken over. And watching them play each other is really cool. Like, Riseborough legitimately practices in the movie to make sure that she sounds like the right person so that she doesn't tip anybody when she transfers over. Abbott's character, because of things that are going on with Riseborough's and she kind of gets trapped, is starting to fight back. And while he has to play Riseborough playing himself, which is really interesting to watch, there are actual times where there's like a struggle for dominance inside the body, and it is just a warped visual trip that, like I said, it effed me up, man. Like, I got to the end of this and I was not, I want to say exhausted, but I was like physically and emotionally, like, that movie took a little out of me, man, and it was cool, man. Like, I love cool sci-fi technology stuff, and I don't need a major explanation to understand what's going on. And like I said, the visual storytelling elements that Cronenberg has in the movie are just top-notch, to the point where, boom, it comes in at number 3. As we move to the top 2, we turn to yet another movie from a director making a directorial debut, and another movie that I literally just saw. And like I said, major shakeup to the top 10. This movie was the thing that almost broke me today when I was trying to lay this all out, man, because Promising Young Woman is so good. Like, it was, I had a feeling it was gonna be really good. just based on the stuff that I had seen in the trailer, and it delivered even more than I was expecting. And you sit there and you go, Emerald Fennell, how on a directorial debut do you deliver this? A movie that talks about, abuse and what abuse can do to a person who's connected to it versus a person who's not connected to it, and how those people can react to that, and what that means long term for those people, and specifically for the ones that are connected to that trauma. It's something that stays with you a lot longer, and Carey Mulligan handles that impeccably, man. There's so many layers to her performance that's very controlled. Like, she is someone who is on the verge of a bit of a break by the end of this movie. Yet, the control in the performance, she never loses it. She is in full control of everything. And even though the character is starting to lose it, she never goes crazy, because she has that control over herself. And watching her navigate everything is just mesmerizing on screen. And what she does from, the dark humor perspective, Mulligan is flat out funny in this movie. And this is a movie that talks about some really serious subject matter. But, she delivers in those lighthearted moments and dark humor moments where, you kind of need that cut every once in a while. And I love how she balances that with her really, really intense work. Where, it's risky, man. And what she does every night is risky. But she does it for valid reasons. And watching her go through to what the culmination of the movie is, like I said, just mesmerizing. And then from Fennell, the last 10 minutes of this movie, you want to talk about taking a big swing at something. Fennell takes a massive swing. She takes so many big swings, but the last 10 minutes is the kind of swing that makes or breaks a movie. And for me, certainly made this movie. It's one of those things where I don't think saying you dislike the ending of the movie means you didn't understand it. I think you can totally understand what she's going for and what the message that is crystal clear to me that she's sending in what happens in the last 10 minutes. But it is something that will, again, F you up, man. I sat there, and when that last 10 minutes starts to kick in, I was like, okay, where do we go from here? Wow. And like I said, it might rub some people the wrong way, but for me, a movie that can take a bold chance like that and take a big swing, and even if it only connects for someone like me and not for somebody else, should be commended. And especially coming from a first-time director, holy crow, man. So much props to Emerald Fennell for turning in one of the best movies of the year, and to Carey Mulligan for turning in one of the best performances of the year. And I'm a big performance-driven guy, and our number one movie, up until I saw Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which featured the best performance possibly of Chad Boseman's entire career, this was the one that was in that top spot. I think Chad's probably got the edge going into the award season, but the performance that you get from Riz Ahmed in Sound of Metal is also mesmerizing and captivating, man. What they ask him to do as this drummer who is starting to suddenly have drastic and sudden hearing loss. He goes from being able to hear, and he's in a metal band, so obviously he's around loud sounds all the time. But he goes from being able to hear to literally almost completely deaf, almost like that. And to watch him navigate what that is like as an actor is so impressive. It is easily one of the best performances of the year. And he just engages and grips you and pulls you into this with what they ask him to do. But as unbelievable as Riz Ahmed is, I think the MVP of the movie is the sound design behind which Darius Martyr, a writer-director here, builds this thing out. It's wild how this sound design had both literal physical and emotional reactions for me. The way he sets up, like, this is what Ruben's day looks like. This happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And there are sounds associated to all of those. And, you're in close on the camera, and you get the drip of the faucet, or, the toaster, the coffee, whatever is going on. You get those. And then after the hearing goes, you go back, and you see those same things, but there's no sound. It is eerie and disturbing and terrifying. And the way in which they do it in the movie when the hearing loss happens, it's a sound that you can familiarize yourself with. If you've ever gone on a plane, sometimes your ears need to pop, and it kind of has that vibe to it. But also that, like, every once in a while, I don't know about you, but sometimes, like, I feel like I can hear a high-pitched beep noise, and, like, it almost feels like I've lost it. And I go like this, I'm like, oh no, I can still hear, but that sound is combined into what is happening to Ruben. And when you're in tight on Ruben, you hear what he's hearing, and that change is horrifying. And then you can back out and you can take everything in, and then you come back in and it's exactly what Ruben's hearing, and you're kind of moving in and out of that. And Ruben hears different things throughout the movie, specifically at the end, after he goes with cochlear implants. That sound completely different, and the way that Martyr sets all of them up really elicits physical and emotional reactions. And along with that unbelievable storytelling and sound design and insanely good performance from Riz Ahmed, you also get to go into a deaf community, which is really cool to watch and understand that, like, being hearing impaired is not a disability. It's just something you got to deal with. And that mindset and the way the deaf community approaches things and approaches new people that are coming into it, which is something that was really, really interesting with the movie. And it attaches to Paul Raci, who grew up with two deaf parents and is very familiar with that deaf community. And having someone that comes from that place, bringing them in, as well as other deaf actors, really added a layer of authenticity that just helped elevate Riz's performance. And Olivia Cook, who plays his lead singer and girlfriend Lou, she also, when she's in the movie, because obviously we get a lot of solo time with Ruben, but when she's in the movie, it adds different, she kind of bookends, and you get very different vibes from her in those moments, and what that means to Ruben, and where that ultimately leads him. And I just sat there, and I was like, I wrestled with the number one spot all day, man, between this and Promising Young Woman. And at the end of the day, it just came down to what got the bigger reaction out of me. And this movie, like, physically felt like the world was closing in on me. I was so uncomfortable at times in this movie, and the way it made me react and appreciate what was given, that's what gave it the edge on Promising Young Woman, and that's what lands it in the number one spot. And after almost double the amount of time we said we were going to be talking, we have reached the Seaman's Top 10 Movies of 2020 list. What a wonderful ride. I love doing this every year. That's my top 10, man. Let's just read them back to you at one time. We gave you the 5 honorable mentions: Fatman, King of Staten Island, Freaky, Disney Pixar Soul, The Five Bloods, and then our top 10: Birds of Prey, Bill and Ted Face the Music, The Invisible Man, His House, Relic, The Vast of Night, Palm Springs, Possessor, Promising Young Woman, and at number 1, Sound of Metal. So there you have it, man. Those are my favorite movies of the year. My top 10. All laid out there for you. It's a really weird year. A lot of horror movies in there, and not a lot of superhero movies. Very different looking top 10 for the Seaman than what he's had in the past. But I love that, man. I love that about films. And I loved how many films surprised me in 2020. I loved how many first-time directors surprised me in 2020. And just didn't surprise me, but delivered like top 5 goods, man. Like, an insane year that had some really, really special moments in film. So those are my top 10 plus 5 honorable mentions. So my top 15, I suppose you could say. That's all I got to say, man. I got nothing else to talk about. It's your turn. Tell me how bad or good my list is. What did you think of my list? Where do you agree and disagree with me? What does your top 10 list look like? What were your favorite moments or performances from the year? Anything you want to talk about around your top 10 and my top 10, down below in the comments section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old Seaman as we get ready to enter 2021. We started, it was 10:30. Now it's like 11:10. We got 45, 50 minutes left before the new year. It's been a wild ride, and I'm glad that I got to take it with you guys, as I always am, man. This has been always so fun. I love film. I love being able to talk movies with you guys, and I just love what you guys did for me this year, man. This was the coolest year I've had on this channel, and hitting 1,000 subscribers and officially being in the YouTube partner program and being able to monetize videos. I'm sorry you guys get pre-roll now, but I need that like 1,000th of a cent every once in a while. But you guys have no idea how much that means to me, and I'm already starting to get choked up, and I'm going to end up getting choked up later when I do my 2020 review of the year, which will probably come tomorrow because it's almost midnight now. But just thank you, man. It's been an awesome year, and thank you for listening to me talk ad nauseum sometimes about film and the movies that I like. But there's my top 10, man. Like I said, make sure you hit those comments. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it. And if you're new and you want to come hang out and you're not part of the C-Maniac Nation, you want to make that subscriber count move on up for the old C-Man and come hang out a little bit more. Jump over there, man. Hit that subscribe button. Come join C-Maniac Nation. God knows I love you guys so much. And the more of you there are, the even better. And if you want alerts and you really like the stuff, then make sure you hit the alert bell. And until next time, I think the next time I see you guys, it'll be 2021. Crazy year. But until then, man, for the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace! Well, as I live and breathe, you still here? Check out a video like this one, or this one, and hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the C-Man's got at the Cinema Sit Down.